Previously, we've talked about the idea of how these computers are communicating. We did the clapping thing, and I got it horrendously wrong. Where can we go from there?
Well, we talked also about how some of the wire protocols work in terms of things like DC balance and other sort of like more physical characteristics. The beauty of these layered approaches is that each layer kind of builds on the previous one, and sometimes that means it doesn't matter whether you're sending it down a fiber cable or whether you're sending it down a copper cable or whether in fact you're sending it over Wi-Fi. The next layer up of the system just assumes it gets a block
Or
of
carrier pigeon?
or carrier pigeon even. Exactly. We've assumed so far that our clapping and our encoding has meant that there's literally no way that we could possibly make a mistake. Everything would be perfect. No Sean would accidentally mishear my clapping as being a different clap. How could that happen? So what we need is a way of checking whether there is an error in the data leading up to this so that we know to throw that packet out. In this instance, we're going to use something called a cyclic redundancy check. Oh, I don't know why I decided to write this out longhand now because my handwriting isn't exactly very good.
That's an error message from a bygone era for me for some reason. I've seen that many
Yes,
times, but I don't remember why.
you
Why would I have
probably,
seen that?
if you've loaded something off of a cassette tape on like a BBC Micro or some of the other eras, not the Spectrum, that had a cheaper way of doing it, but they would have blocks on the tape, and the blocks would use the kind of noisy, squeaky encoding that we've talked about before. And at the end of each block, there would be one of these CRCs, cyclic redundancy checks, and it would tell you, oh yeah, that didn't load properly. And then you would rewind the tape and you'd try it again until you got that block in. So what you were doing with your cassette tape in the 1980s is effectively what both floppy disks do automatically by just keep spinning and retrying, or on an Ethernet level, if the packet doesn't arrive and the other end knows that it was expecting one, it will ask for it to be retransmitted at a higher level. And so, yeah, CRCs, yes, but for you, it's a bit of a.
I just as soon as you started saying those words, I appended in my head the word error on the end.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. And
Anyway,
so, what we really want, and if this was if we had all the time in the world, and if we had all the computing power and resources in the world, we would probably use something like a cryptographically secure hash to hash all of the data and then store the hash at the end, and then we would know absolutely it hadn't been tampered with either maliciously or by mistakenly seeing a 1 as a 0 or either way around, and that would be beautiful and perfect. Except we don't have all the computing resources in the world. We've got like a 10 gigabit Ethernet connection, and we've just got to keep going all the time, and that's a very computationally expensive thing to do. So we want something cheap and cheerful that will let us know if the data is okay. A bit like, your bank cards, if you mistype in your bank card, there's one of the digits at least tells you whether or not you've got all the other ones right. If you add them up and divide by some number or something like that, which is kind of what we're going to do here. Now, earlier checksums were exactly that. It was a sum. You just added up, you interpreted your entire sequence of bytes in the message as a sequence of digits that you added up one after another, each byte, and maybe you limit it to 32 bits worth of adding up. You just stored the sum at the end, add up the bytes and check the sum. That's great, right? It's great, except that it's quite common to get 2-bit errors. One that adds maybe 16. If we set the third bit, you add 16. Is that right? Whatever bit it is. And then maybe another bit's cleared that was set, and now you've added 16 in one place and you subtracted 16 from another place, and your sum is going to be the same. And so you'll never detect those kinds of errors, and those are relatively common. So we need a bit more rigorous check. And what I find amusing about the cyclic redundancy check is what it really is doing is it's kind of like dividing the message up and getting the remainder. Dividing by some kind of prime number. I'm going to use a lot of air quotes here, and I'm sure that the sister channel to Computerphile, Numberphile, has probably done something a bit more rigorous than what I'm about to describe, but this is how I've internalized it. So we're going to actually treat the entire message as a sequence of bits. No longer going to treat it as bytes, we're going to treat it as a sequence of bits, and we're going to assume that bit sequence is a massive, massive, massive number. And in fact, that number is not really even a number, it's a polynomial. That is, it's something, you remember old x squared plus x plus 1 kind of, that's a polynomial, it's got these things, but except that like in this instance we've got like x to the 512 plus x to the whatever, all these different terms are in it, but that doesn't actually matter for now. But it's treated like a massive polynomial, and then we're going to divide in a number into that massive polynomial and get the result, and then that will be the thing that we're going to store at the end of it. Now, how do you divide a massive number? I mean, like, do you remember how to do, like, was it 22 into 7? If you're going to do, like, dividing in 3, goes in 3, or I've got them the wrong way around, whatever, that kind of division is what we're going to be doing. And that sounds awfully complicated, except that we're going to be doing this in a magical thing called Galois field 2, which is a field where there's only 2 numbers. Those numbers are 0 and 1. That's convenient, right? And the rules are very, very different. Effectively, addition and subtraction look the same, and multiplication looks sort of similar as well, and division, ultimately it doesn't matter. I'm just going to show you what the thing does, right? So because a message like this will have a 32-bit CRC, and because we don't have all the time in the world, I'm going to do a 4-bit CRC and show you the process by which it goes. I'm going to take the number 1101. This is our entire message, right? Because life is too short, right? And what I need to do is I need to divide into this number some kind of prime number. I keep air quoting this prime number, but it's called a generating polynomial. It's like a special properties. Maths PhDs will work out which ones have the best characteristics for the kinds of errors we might expect on a say an Ethernet cable, like this many bits in a row or whatever. And so the generator polynomial for this is 10011. And so we are going to divide 10011 into 1, and I'm going to carefully draw these out, 1, because I have to line this up, line 1. And the way that this works is that I actually need to pad it out with the number of bits that we're going to expect in our remainder, and the remainder is our 4-bit CRC. So I'm going to do 0, 0, 0, 0. Okay, I'm going to divide this number into this bigger number over here. Now, just to be clear, although I've picked 4 bits just because, time is short, this could be any number of bits. This could be 1,000 bits. This could be our entire message, right? It's just that we would need a lot more paper. The way that we divide is kind of related to the way that you think of, like, dividing normal numbers. So I'm going to first of all go 10011. Does it go into 1? No. Does it go into 11? No. Does it go into, there aren't enough digits, right? And so I'm going to keep looking until I find enough digits to divide it into. So 10011 goes into 11010. Once I have 5 bits, right, I know that this could divide into it. So, again, what do you do? Well, it will go into it once. We don't care about what the result is. We only care about the remainder, which is the bit that's going to be down at the bottom right hand over here. And so what I'm going to say, okay, it goes into it once. I'm not even going to write that down. But now we're going to write an 10011 under here. That's the number I've brought down. And then what would you do? Normally you'd subtract the 2, right? You'd say, okay, having got into it that many times, I subtract that out and then... Right. Now, subtraction is the same as an exclusive OR in the Galois field. So all we're doing is we're looking to see, right, so 0 exclusive OR 1 is 1. 1 and 1 is 0, 0 and 0 is 0, 1 and 0 is 1, 1 and 1 is 0. Fabulous. Okay. Now I'm going to bring down, if you remember all this kind of stuff, a 0 because I haven't got enough digits anymore, right? And then again, my 10011 goes into it again. So I'm going to go 10011. I'm going to write minus there just to remind us, but this is really like an exclusive OR. I can't remember what the symbol is for exclusive OR, but you can maybe look it up for me.
It's a plus in a circle, isn't it? I think it's a plus in a circle.
That's right. Okay, not a star. Asterisk in a circle, like details. So we do the same thing again, and we end up with 0, 0, 0, 0, 1 in this instance, and then we bring down another 0. This doesn't go in because we need at least a 1 bit at the beginning. That's what we're really looking for. I know I'm kind of alluding to this. We're looking for at least a 1 bit at the beginning. So we bring down another 0 down here, and it still doesn't go in because we haven't got a 1. So we're done here. That's the end of it. And then the last 4 digits that we're left here, just like it would be if we had done a real division, is the remainder. So 0100. And so 0100 would be the 4-bit CRC. And you can imagine doing this with a 32-bit, or in fact, there's always 1 bit more in the generator than there is bits in the output. That kind of makes sense. So you'd have a 33-bit polynomial up here, and you'd have a 32-bit remainder down here, and you would have your entire message in here, and then you have 32 bits of zeros that you'd put on the end of it, and then you go through that process and you end up with the CRC. And the thing about this is that just like if you take an arbitrary big number and divide it by, say, a prime, is that you can't just make a simple transposition error and switch the digits around or anything like that and get the same answer. There isn't a clever way, or rather an unfortunate side effect of like moving these digits around, right? So it's a much more secure hash. It's definitely not cryptographically secure, but it's a much more likely to catch errors in the data stream. And in the actual Ethernet encoding, there's some other bits where things are flipped on purpose just to make them all net out. And while this sounds really, really, really complicated, and I've certainly described it in ways that humans would do this, the reason that this is an important that's used on the wire is that you can implement this with a very simple linear feedback shift register, which is to say one of those random number generators that both we talked about for the 6466 encoding, and I'm sure there are other computer files that have done how computers generate random numbers, and an LFSR with essentially taps at these locations, putting a bit in at a time, gives you the same answer, they're equivalent. And so it's a really simple piece of circuitry. I've made it look very difficult, but it's just a few exclusive OR gates in a shift register. And that means that as the message is streaming through the rest of the hardware that is inside your Ethernet switch or your network card, it is keeping this remainder up to date. And then when it gets to the end of the packet, it can just check it and then say, yes, this is a good packet, or no, sadly, CRC error, rewind the tape.
If you enjoy watching all the computer scientists and content here on Computerphile but think, this is something I could never do myself, well, think again. Our episode sponsor Brilliant is crammed with amazing courses about coding, computers, AI, plus all this other good stuff like mathematics, science. It's so well designed, it's elegant, it's super interactive, it's just fun. Brush up on old skills and learn new ones. And who knows, this could be the first step to a new career. Oh, and by the way, you can give your family and friends subscriptions to Brilliant as gifts as well. Now, to learn for free for a full 30 days, go to brilliant.org/computerphile or zap that QR code on screen. There'll also be a link in the description, of course. And Brilliant's giving our viewers 20% off an annual premium subscription, which gives you unlimited daily access to everything. Our thanks to Brilliant for supporting Computerphile.